Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. You can't be serious, Lily, I said, standing in the middle of our tiny kitchen with the kettle still whistling behind me. You're marrying that guy? Lily leaned against the counter, arms crossed, chin high. Yes, Dad, I'm serious. His name is Victor, and I love him. My name is Daniel. I'm 58 years old. I live in Pine Ridge, a rural town in Northern California, where the winters are long and the gossip travels faster than the snowplow. I lost my wife to cancer when Lily was 10. Since then, it's just been us. I'm not trying to control you, I said, turning off the stove. But you've got to admit, Victor rubs people the wrong way. She scoffed. People like you. People like everyone, I said. He talks like he's selling something every time he opens his mouth, and I don't like how he talks to you either. He's condescending, like you're lucky to be with him. Lily rolled her eyes. He jokes, Dad. That's his personality. No, I said, my voice firmer. That's not joking. That's putting you down and calling it humor. You know what that leads to? It starts small, and then you wake up one day wondering where the hell your self-worth went. She stared at me, then shook her head. You don't know him. You just don't like that someone else is taking your place. I blinked. What? You raised me alone, Dad. I get it. But I'm not a little girl anymore. You're used to being the only man in my life. And now that someone else is here, someone I chose, you can't handle it. That stung more than I cared to show. I sat down at the table, slow and heavy. That's not what this is about. It is, though, she said, her voice rising. Victor loves me. He supports me. He wants a future with me. What have you been doing lately, huh? Moping around the house since Grandpa died? You won't even talk about the will. I flinched. Grandpa, my dad. He passed 3 months ago, and with him went nearly everything, including a $9 million inheritance he left me. I hadn't told Lily about it. I wasn't ready. I looked up at her, still standing there with her arms folded and her jaw set, just like her mother used to do when she was trying not to cry. I'm trying to protect you, I said quietly. Victor, he reminds me of the kind of men my father warned me about. Well, maybe Grandpa should have warned me about you, she snapped. That was it. She grabbed her purse, her coat, and stormed out the front door, slammed it hard enough to shake the windows, and I just sat there in the cold, silent kitchen, staring at the empty chair across from me, listening to the kettle slowly cool. I parked by the edge of the cemetery just before sundown, a 6-pack of Dad's favorite root beer still in the passenger seat. The grass was cold and damp as I knelt beside his headstone, tracing the carved letters with my thumb. Hey, Dad, I said, my voice quiet in the wind. You were right, about people who smile too big and talk too fast. I told him about the fight with Lily, about the things she said that still echoed in my chest like they were shouted through a tunnel. She was angry, and maybe she had reason. I hadn't handled it well, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Victor wasn't just arrogant. He was dangerous. The kind of man who saw love as leverage. You always told me, never trust a man who flatters everyone but listens to no one, I murmured. I see it now. The inheritance paperwork was still in the metal lockbox under my bed. $9 million. I hadn't touched a cent. I hadn't told a soul. And now, with Lily marrying someone who wore ambition like cologne, I knew I had to keep it that way. I stayed there until my knees started to ache, the sky bleeding orange above the trees. Then I drove home and stared at my phone for 20 minutes before finally calling her. She answered on the 3rd ring. Dad? Hey, kiddo, I said, clearing my throat. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled. She exhaled sharply, the way she always did when she'd been crying. No, I'm sorry too. I said some stuff I didn't mean. We talked. Not about Victor, not yet. Just about the wedding, how it would be at the Rothmore Vineyard in Napa, how she found a dress that made her feel like her mom was in the room. I told her I'd be there. She said that meant everything. After we hung up, I went to the bedroom, pulled out the lockbox, and checked the documents again. Bank records, property deeds. A letter from Dad I still hadn't opened. I locked it all back up and slid it under the bed. Not yet, I said out loud. I'd show up to her wedding with a smile and a suit and a heart full of hope. But no one, not Victor, not his polished grin, not even Lily, would know about the money. I was going to protect her, even if she hated me for it later. The vineyard looked like something out of a movie. White roses climbing along the archway, soft music playing from hidden speakers, guests dressed like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. I tugged at my tie, already regretting the suit. It didn't feel like me, but today wasn't about me. Lily took my arm, beaming in her dress. "You okay, Dad?" I nodded, clearing my throat. "You look like your mother." Her eyes softened. "Thanks for being here." As we walked down the aisle, everyone stood. I kept my eyes forward, but I could feel Victor's smirk from 30 feet away. He looked like a man closing a deal, not marrying a woman. Flashy suit, Rolex gleaming. Smile that didn't touch his eyes. I kissed Lily on the cheek and placed her hand in his. "Take care of her," I said, low enough that only he could hear. He winked. "Always." I returned to my seat, stomach tight. I wanted to believe her happiness was real, but something about the way he squeezed her fingers like a handshake set off every alarm in my chest. The reception was even more extravagant. Glittering chandeliers in the tasting hall, glassware I was afraid to touch. I found a spot near the back and tried to blend in. It didn't work. Victor's mother, Sylvia, approached with a glass of champagne and a practiced smile. "Daniel, isn't it? You must be proud." "I am," I said. She sipped, then gave me a long, evaluating look. "Lily's lovely. She'll fit in with Victor's world soon enough. Of course, she'll need guidance. You know, securing her future." My jaw tightened. "What kind of guidance?" "Oh, you know," she said, waving it off. "Prenups, inheritance matters. Those conversations aren't easy for girls without experience." She smiled again, like she hadn't just called my daughter naive. Later, as I stepped outside for air, I passed a side room and heard Victor's voice through the door, low and confident. "Doc, we've already talked about it. She doesn't need to know yet. Once we lock down access, then we push for the transfer. Dad thinks there's family money." Sylvia responded, quieter. "Just get it in writing. She'll sign anything if it sounds romantic enough." I stood there, heart pounding, my hands clenched at my sides. Every instinct told me to burst in and end it, but I didn't, not yet. When it was time for the father of the bride toast, I held my glass steady and spoke from the heart. "Lily, your mother would be proud of the woman you've become. Marriage is a promise, a real one. Not for convenience or comfort or gain, but for love." Victor clapped first, loud and performative. Then he stood and launched into a speech about ambition and building empires and marrying someone who sees the bigger picture. The room laughed politely. I didn't. That night, I left early. Drove home alone under the stars, sick with the feeling that she'd just walked into something she didn't understand, and that Victor knew exactly what he was doing. It was a Wednesday evening when my phone rang, just past 9. I was finishing dishes, the house quiet. I saw Lily's name and answered on the first ring. She didn't speak right away, just the sound of her crying, sharp and messy. "Lily," I said, already grabbing my keys. "What's going on? Can you come get me?" she choked out. "Please, I'm outside. I can't be in there." She didn't say his name, but I knew. I told her I was on my way and hung up. Victor's house was only 20 minutes away, but it felt longer. When I pulled up, Lily was sitting on the front steps, still in her work clothes, a duffel bag by her feet and a small suitcase beside her. Her eyes were puffy, her hair messy like she'd run her hands through it a dozen times. She looked exhausted. I parked and rushed over. "What happened?" She stood shakily, arms crossed over herself. "He cheated on me," she said, voice flat. "With a woman he works with. I found texts, photos, everything." My stomach dropped. "I confronted him," she went on, staring past me. "He didn't even deny it, just said, 'I thought we had an understanding.' Like this was a business agreement, not a marriage." I took her suitcase and guided her toward the truck. She added, "I found a folder in his drawer, divorce papers, pre-filled. He had them ready in case I didn't deliver." "Deliver what?" She looked at me finally. "Dad, he's been asking questions about you, how much money you have, whether Grandpa left you anything." I didn't speak, just started the truck and drove. "He called it a family opportunity," she whispered. "He said your house looked like it was sitting on unrealized value, that you were old-fashioned with your wealth. He actually used the word wealth." I kept my hand steady on the wheel. "I feel so stupid," she said quietly. I reached over and touched her shoulder. "You're not stupid. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it." We rode in silence for a minute. Then I said, "He's not going to get away with this." She turned to me, tired but alert. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, "we're not done." Not by a long shot. We pulled into the driveway back home, the porch light still on. As I helped her out of the truck, I made a silent promise. He wanted a fight. Now he was going to get one. The next morning, I called Ray Bellman, my father's old lawyer, and one of the few people I still trusted. He didn't ask questions, just told us to come in. Ray's office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same creaky leather chairs, same cluttered bookshelf, same smell of strong coffee and old files. Lily sat beside me, quiet, eyes puffy, but sharp. Ray listened as she explained everything. The affair, the pre-filled divorce papers, the money talk, the lies. When she finished, he nodded slowly. I'll start drafting papers today, but we'll need more than just your story. Victor's slick, and if he's planning something, it won't be clean. Lily looked at me, unsure. I spoke up. We want to hit first, not just defend, expose him. Ray leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Then we'll need evidence, documentation, witnesses if we can get them. Right on cue, Lily's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her lips tightening. "It's him," she whispered. "Answer it," Ray said calmly. "Put it on speaker." She hesitated, then did. Victor's voice came through, smooth but edged. "So, this is how it's gonna go, huh? You walk out and suddenly you're the victim?" Lily didn't respond. "You want to fight, Lily? Fine. But I'm warning you, if you drag my name through the mud, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. About you. About your dad. I know things." Ray scribbled a note and mouthed, "Let him talk." Victor kept going. "Your little family fortune? Yeah, I've heard the whispers. You think it's off limits in divorce court? It's not. So, unless you want your old man's house and assets on the line, I suggest you back off." Click. Lily's hands were shaking. Ray looked at us. "We're not backing off. But now I know exactly how to play this." He pulled a card from his drawer and handed it to me. "This guy's quiet, expensive, and very good. Let him dig into Victor's financials and personal history." I took the card. I didn't flinch at the price tag Ray hinted at. Later that evening, I made the call. The investigator didn't say much, just asked for Victor's full name and business info. I wired the retainer from a private account tied to the inheritance. No trace. No questions. Victor thought he could bully his way through this. But he underestimated how far a father would go when someone tried to destroy his daughter. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about building a case. And we had just taken the first step. It started with a whisper at the grocery store. The cashier didn't look Lily in the eye. The woman in line behind her nudged her husband and muttered something under her breath. By the time we got home, her hands were shaking. "Have you seen this?" she asked, holding out her phone. There it was, a social media post from Sylvia. A smiling photo of Victor with the caption, "Praying for strength as we deal with betrayal. Sometimes people pretend to be stable until the mask falls." Another post showed a screenshot of an old text Lily had sent. Nothing dramatic, just venting about stress during wedding planning, with the caption, "She was never well." We tried to help her. She didn't want help. It didn't take long. Friends started unfollowing her. A coworker accidentally left her off an email thread. People who once sent her wedding gifts were now saying she was unstable, that she cheated, that she married Victor for his money. She locked herself in her room for hours that night. When she finally came out, she sat on the couch beside me and said, "I don't even recognize my life anymore." I didn't have some perfect speech ready. I just reached for her hand. "Dad," she whispered, "maybe we should drop it." I turned to her. "Number? You don't back down just because someone lies louder than you." She stared ahead, hollow. "I didn't think it would get this ugly." "It always gets ugly when the truth gets close," I said. "That's what your grandpa used to tell me." The next morning, I met with the private investigator again. He handed me a manila folder with a weight that felt heavier than it should have. "I found more than you asked for," he said. Inside were bank transfers from Victor's company to shell accounts traced back to Sylvia, real estate deals that didn't exist, loan agreements with forged signatures, a fake property deal with a woman whose name had shown up on Victor's call log the night Lily found the texts. "This is fraud," the investigator said plainly, "on multiple levels. And it looks like your ex-son-in-law and his mother have been running this game for a while." I nodded, quietly furious. "Can we take this to court?" He smiled faintly. "Not yet, but soon." I left the office and sat in my truck for a few minutes, watching the rain hit the windshield. My father's voice echoed in my mind. If someone tries to bury you, make sure you grow roots where they planted you. I looked at that folder again. Victor and Sylvia had started a war. Now we were coming armed with the truth. The courtroom was colder than it needed to be. Sterile walls, polished wood, and the sound of shuffled papers echoing like thunder. Lily sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, hands folded tight in her lap. She looked calm, but I knew better. Victor walked in like he owned the place, wearing a tailored suit and that same smirk he wore at the wedding. Sylvia trailed behind him, wrapped in pearls and smugness. They barely glanced at us. Judge Heller entered, gavelled everyone to silence, and nodded toward Victor's attorney. "Your Honor," the man said, rising, "we have documentation that clearly shows Mrs. Hathaway verbally agreed to transfer partial ownership of marital property to Mr. Hathaway's holding company." He passed the judge a stack of papers. This includes an email chain and a notarized letter signed just days before the separation. Lily stiffened. I leaned closer. "They're bluffing." Our lawyer, Ray, didn't flinch. He stood, buttoned his coat, and stepped forward with his own folder. "Your Honor, what they've submitted is not just inadmissible, it's criminally fraudulent." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That's a strong accusation, Mr. Bellman." Ray smiled. "Then allow me to support it." He handed the judge a different set of documents. "Here are forensic reports showing the email chain was fabricated. Metadata confirms it was created 2 weeks after the separation. And the notary who witnessed the letter, he was already under investigation for bribery in an unrelated real estate scam." The judge looked up sharply. "Do you have that notary available?" Ray nodded toward the back. A nervous man in a rumpled jacket stood and walked forward. Judge Heller leaned in. "Did you notarize this letter?" The man hesitated. Then finally, "Yes, but they paid me to do it. I never saw her sign anything." Gasps scattered around the courtroom. Sylvia's lips parted in shock. Victor shifted in his seat. Ray didn't stop. "And we have voice recordings, legally obtained of Mr. Hathaway discussing fraudulent asset transfers, one of which was never disclosed during discovery." He pressed play on a small speaker. Victor's voice filled the room. "It doesn't matter what she thinks she signed. We'll bury her in paperwork until she gives up." Judge Heller held up a hand. "I've heard enough," he said, voice low but firm. "We will be investigating these claims of forgery, bribery, and perjury. And if they hold up, the court will pursue criminal charges. For now, motion to strike all of the defendant's submitted documents is granted." Lily let out a breath like she'd been holding it for days. Victor tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. "You may want to speak to a criminal attorney." And just like that, the room shifted. We hadn't just fought back. We'd turned the tide. The courthouse hallway smelled like old paper and nerves. Lily and I sat on the bench outside the courtroom, side by side, not speaking. After everything, we didn't need words. Ray came out grinning. "It's done," the judge signed off. "Divorce finalized. Victor pays all legal costs." Lily blinked at him. "All?" Ray nodded. "Every penny, and that's not all. A criminal investigation's been opened. The fraud, the bribery, the shell companies. This thing is bigger than we thought." I looked at Lily. She stared ahead, stunned. Then her shoulders dropped like she'd been carrying weight for months and finally set it down. A few minutes later, we stepped outside into the sunlight. The reporters were already moving on, chasing another story. Victor and Sylvia didn't come out the front doors. They'd slipped away quietly, probably through a back exit. Cowards. I looked at Lily. She smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't big or loud. Just a small, peaceful smile that said she could finally breathe again. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "I think so." We walked down the courthouse steps slowly, side by side, like we had when she was little and I used to hold her hand crossing the street. "I should be furious," she said. "All those months, everything he did, but you're not?" I asked. She looked over at me. "Number, I'm just tired and relieved and grateful I had you." That hit hard. I cleared my throat. "Well, you always had me, even when you didn't believe it." We reached the parking lot. She paused and turned to face me. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," she said quietly. "When everyone else was calling me crazy, you reminded me I wasn't." "That's what dads do," I said, "and your grandpa would have done the same." She hugged me, tight, longer than I expected. "Thank you," she whispered. We stood there for a while, Just two people who had been through hell and made it out together. No legal battle, no pile of evidence, no victory in court could match the simple feeling of knowing she was safe again. As we drove home, Lily stared out the window and said, "I don't know what comes next." I smiled at the road ahead. "We start over," I said, "clean, strong, and smarter." She nodded, and this time she really believed it. We got home just before sunset. Lily kicked off her shoes by the door like she used to in high school, and I tossed my jacket over the back of the same old recliner. Everything felt still. After dinner, I poured us both a cup of tea. She was curled up on the couch, blanket around her shoulders, eyes soft for the first time in months. "There's something I need to show you," I said. She looked up. "Okay." I went to the bedroom and pulled the metal lockbox from under the bed. It hadn't been opened since the week after Dad's funeral. I set it down on the coffee table and unlocked it slowly. Inside were the documents, bank statements, letters, a copy of the will, a note written in my father's shaky script. Lily leaned forward. "What is this?" "My inheritance," I said. $9 million. Grandpa left it to me." She stared at me like I was speaking a different language. "9 million?" I nodded. "I didn't tell you sooner because of Victor. I didn't know what he was really after, but I wasn't going to take any chances." Her eyes welled up. "Dad." I handed her the letter. She unfolded it carefully, reading my father's words aloud. "Protect what matters. Money comes and goes. Family doesn't, unless you let it." She pressed the letter to her chest. "I can't believe you carried this alone." "I didn't want to burden you," I said, "and I didn't want him anywhere near it." Lily wiped her eyes. "You were right, about all of it." I shook my head. "It's not about being right. It's about making sure you're okay. That's always been the job." She smiled through her tears. "So, what happens now?" "We start fresh," I said. "We use this for something that matters, something you believe in. Your mom, your grandpa, they'd want that." She leaned against me. "I'd like to build something, a counseling center maybe, for women who've been through stuff like this." I nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll do." We spent the rest of the night sharing old stories, about her mom, about grandpa, about the ridiculous things Lily did as a kid that I never told her I knew about. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the windows like a soft exhale, and inside, for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to hide, just healing and the start of something new.